Senator Roy Blunt usually gets his mail here in studio, but he joins us by phone this time. Good morning, Senator Blunt. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, morning, McGraw. Nice to be with you.
You got it. Let's talk about the sequester. Let's start off there. Congratulations. You got the government to cut spending across the board.
Well, we did. And, the better thing would be to target that spending, and we can do that by making the appropriations process work. But the right thing to do here is to cut spending, and the Budget Control Act is one way to do it. And one of the tools in that sort of the last fallback position is if you won't cut spending any other way, then you'll cut it in every line to get to the maximum amount of money that we agreed we could spend on the discretionary side of the budget this year. And that's what's happening. And that's why I kept saying, look, the spending caps not only I believe should hold, but I believe will hold. We're going to take these spending cuts. The question is, do we take them in the best possible way by debating and appropriating what should be cut and what shouldn't, or do we take them in the other way, which was to do this across-the-board cutting? And I think we should have taken the other path, but at the end of the day, I think the right thing to do is to stick with these spending caps that are now in law, and let's see if we can't make the appropriations process work for October 1 so we don't have to have the sequester again. We just simply debate how we're going to spend the maximum amount of money that the law now allows us to spend on the discretionary side of the budget, the side that we should be debating and talking about.
Senator, explain to everybody, because I haven't necessarily gotten this answer either, and that is this sequester cuts, is this a cut in the future growth, or is this actual reduction in money each department's getting?
It can be a little of both, depending on how the budget process, how the appropriations process works. But I think in this case, in almost all departments, it's a cut in growth. It's a cut in the what you would have expected to have otherwise, rather than generally they're at last year's spending level or within a very close number of last year's spending level, and so it's a cut in growth.
The American people have long since given up both sides actually coming together and agreeing on any type of discretionary spending cuts. So since you guys can't agree on it being Wednesday or Thursday in Washington, if that's the best and it's not going to happen, across the board spending, I mean, everyone's got a sacred cow. This way, everything gets cut and you all have to live within your means.
Well, based on that sort of set of circumstances, you mentioned, if we can't agree on the basic facts. I mean, one of the things, McGraw, you're going to see in the next 10 days as the Senate, for the first time in 4 years, debates a budget, is a fundamental unwillingness to agree on just the basic facts that we're dealing with. Senator McCaskill and I had a bunch of federal agencies in the other day who are trying to agree on a proposal to put out there for the public to see on how to repair some levees in southeast Missouri. And what we were insisting to them was, you have to agree on the facts, that this is foolish, that government is fighting government. And, of course, what we're going to see this week is senators and representatives on either side fighting each other about just the facts. Have you taken $1 trillion cut or not? Were we going to spend $1 trillion in Afghanistan and Iraq over the next 10 years? Of course we weren't. But in one budget, that's going to be $1 trillion savings that we're not going to be spending money in a war that we're no longer involved in, and the president said we wouldn't be involved in.
Senator Roy Blunt, our guest for a couple more minutes. Paul Ryan's budget in the House makes an assumption that Obamacare will be repealed. Are you still holding out hope that Obamacare will be repealed, or are you going and assuming that it will be implemented?
I believe it should be repealed, but as long as President Obama is president, I think it will be implemented. Now, I'm not at all sure at the 3.5 years from now, when we see what's happened to the healthcare system, that people will want to continue down that path. So I think there's a real possibility that this will be a big issue in the next election. I know that there are a lot of people who had health insurance 2 years ago that aren't going to have health insurance 2 years from now, maybe aren't going to have health insurance 6 months from now. And I think people are going to be very dissatisfied once they see the impact of the president's health care plan on the health care system. But as long as he's president, I think that it'll stay in place. On the other hand, Paul Ryan's talking about a 10-year budget window, and I think there's a very good chance sometime in that 10 years the American people insist that we take a different path in health care than the one we're on right now.
They keep talking about this grand bargain where 10-to-1 revenue versus spending cuts, or 5-to-1, or some type of grand bargain that President Obama would actually agree to some type of entitlement reform for revenue. Is that at all possible, Senator?
Possible, but I don't think it's likely. And I think we're too far apart on both the revenue, the revenue idea. From my view, the president's had $1.65 trillion in new revenue since he became president. All of the spending cut discussions outside by economists, the Simpson-Bowles Commission, have always been you should take 3 or 4 spending dollar cuts for every new dollar of revenue. If you multiply that $1.6 trillion by 3 or 4, we've still got lots of cuts to take before we start talking about more spending. But again, I actually talked to the president day before yesterday on the phone, and he knows, and everybody knows, that these important safety net programs like Social Security and Medicare will not last unless we adjust them for the demographics of today. So at some point we have to deal with that. Divided government is a great time to do it, and I continue to hope the president will lead in that effort to be sure those programs are still out there 25 years from now for people that are paying into them right now.
What was the conversation like with the president? Was it jovial or was it somewhat contentious?
It wasn't contentious. We have different points of view, but we've always had a decent relationship in terms of talking about issues and talking generally. The only bill the president passed when he was in the Senate was a bill that I passed out of the House, and then he and Tom Coburn passed in the Senate. So I'm part of his one legislative success, which was actually more transparency on who the government gives money to, grants particularly, as well as contracts. And so it's not a bad relationship. It's just we come at the problems of the federal government from a very different point of view. He thinks he still wants to get more revenue. I think we have enough revenue on the table. Now we need to do more than just the spending caps on the discretionary side of the budget and get to where the money is. There was a Depression era bank robber called Willie Sutton. His name was Willie Sutton, and somebody asked him, "Why do you rob banks?" And his answer was, because that's where the money is. 62 to 64% of the federal money is in the side of the budget that we're not talking about yet, the so-called entitlement spending, the mandatory spending. All of our discussion right now is about the slightly more than a third of the budget that we actually debate and appropriate, and eventually we have to get to where the money is if we're going to do the right kinds of things for the future. Senator,
do you have a moment? Do you have one quick moment?
Yes.
So not to correct you, because you know how much I respect you and our other senator from the great state. However, I have to correct you on Willie Sutton, because my cousin just wrote a historical novel on Willie Sutton called Sutton. It was on the New York Times bestseller list, and Willie Sutton claims that he never said, "I robbed banks because that's where the money is."
I thought you were going to say your cousin was Willie Sutton. That wouldn't have surprised me. Wouldn't have surprised me a bit.
No. So anyway, they say Willie Sutton said that. However, Willie Sutton wrote a book.
Start saying allegedly the alleged bank robber Willie Sutton said.
That is correct, and he wrote a book, and I think the name of his book was "I Never Said That" or something along those lines. But anyway, so not that I want to correct you, sir. I just wanted to set the record.
Oh no, I'm glad to know this. And maybe that should be the name of the book that you and I write. I never said that.
I never said that. There you go. Senator, have a good day. Thanks for checking in.
Good to talk to you. See you soon.
All right. Senator Roy Blunt here on the Big 550 KTRS, and you should all go out and get the New York Times best-selling book, Sutton.